we could say that one of the original, main, primal feeling of human being is the feeling of being lost in this universe. Being lost. So it's also the feeling that there is this necessity to find a compass, to find a way, to be more than what it looks like. That's very human, to feel that.
Something that is important is there are different disciplines in the project. There are different types of users, different types of education. This can be applied to a lot of different disciplines, but I'm talking about the academic. So what I think is important when you are doing a project is to understand how all these people, they can live together. But it's not only living together because you don't have a space and they need to be all together. No, the important thing here is like, how do you create the mix of activities?
Because no one or no sector can develop on its own in silos. It's not possible. And we've given too much importance to only one areas, like scientific areas. Like anything that is explained today, people want to have a backing of science, but life is not only about scientific discoveries. Before we came to this science and made it the only way to value things or to translate or understand, there were other. And there were also scientific methods. It doesn't have to be in a lab with a tube for it to be qualified as scientific. So that's why for me, convergence speaks to bringing all these different disciplines together.
Sometimes I feel like in order to really create good convergences between the fields, you have to be an expert in all of these fields. So you have to be a mathematician, you have to be a biologist, you have to be a psychologist, you have to be a computer scientist. All of these fields you have to know in a reasonable degree of detail in order to make convincing bridges. So that is, I think, very challenging, but at the same time also super interesting.
This year, 2026, we've chosen convergence as a theme. Why? Because if you look at the history of science, and science started more or less in Greece 3,000 years ago, the whole history of science has been a history of divergence. If you take someone like Aristotle, for instance, who is considered the father of science, in a sense, he was a botanist, he was a zoologist, he was an astronomer, he was a philosopher, he was a logician, mathematician, he was everything.
Donc on a parlé d'un grand monsieur qui est le symbole de la convergence des sciences. Il a été ingénieur, mathématicien, physicien, astronome et spécialiste de la mécanique céleste. Et en plus, il a fait de la philosophie des sciences.
And if you take the big names, the big Arabic names of scientists like Ibn Sina, Ibn al-Haytham, Biruni, they were interested in all kinds of what we today see as different scientific disciplines.
Les sciences au départ, il y a longtemps, il y avait des savants. Et les savants étaient théologiens, mathématiciens, physiciens, biologistes, médecins, savants, donc avec un savoir global. Et puis au fur et à mesure du temps, on s'est spécialisé, jusqu'à arriver à des degrés de spécialisation où vous pouvez être extrêmement brillant dans votre field of expertise, mais où vous n'avez aucun savoir sur le reste.
Quand on écrit aujourd'hui un papier scientifique, s'il peut être compris par 100 personnes à travers le monde, si une centaine de personnes est capable de comprendre ce que vous êtes en train d'écrire, c'est déjà beaucoup. Donc les scientifiques travaillent dans des bulles où ils sont hyper spécialisés.
c'est très bien tout ça, mais on ne comprend pas tous les mécanismes, on ne comprend pas tous les processus. Donc parce que le système il est très complexe et donc on n'a pas toutes les informations pour pouvoir mieux prédire le système. Donc il faut intégrer c'est là où ça vient la question, ou la genèse probablement de cette semaine-là de Science Week, la convergence, c'est la convergence qui est très importante. Donc pourquoi ? Parce que depuis un moment, on a compartimenté le système. On a travaillé sur l'azote. On a travaillé d'une manière séparément du carbone. On a travaillé sur le carbone inséparément de l'azote. On a travaillé sur le phosphore inséparément du carbone. Et donc, on a ce qu'on appelle des fragments des connaissances qui nous ont généré des connaissances aussi fragmentées, c'est-à-dire une vision non holistique, non intégrative, alors que le système est lié les uns les autres. Convergence is happening on its own. When people are, building computers, they are actually thinking specialist engineer. They are thinking about the brain, which is a biological thing, And so I think they are thinking about neural networks, and they are even trying to imitate neural networks. And now, when cognitive scientists, even psychiatrists, are thinking about the brain, which is a biological apparatus, they are thinking about computer. It's the other way around. So, it's converging, even if we don't want it to converge. So the real question is not to say if we are trying to converge or not, is are we going to pilot? Are we going to drive this convergence?
In a sense, cognitive neuroscience is already a convergence between cognitive science on the one hand and neuroscience on the other hand. So we study the mind by also looking at the brain and how the brain sort of implements the mind.
Et ça, je pense que les modèles anciens, évidemment, on ne va pas pouvoir les reproduire, mais d'en être conscient et de faire travailler, refaire travailler ensemble des spécialités très pointues. Donc, pouvoir faire converger ces chercheurs pour travailler sur des thématiques ensemble. En tout cas, personnellement, pendant ma résidence à l'IAS, en fait, c'est ce que j'essaye de développer au niveau de l'UM6P en travaillant avec les collègues, donc géologues, astrophysiciens, etc., pour essayer de monter quelque chose ensemble, rapprocher les sciences, les faire converger, les faire travailler ensemble pour reconstruire ensemble.
I think that it's very rare for a science to just create something completely new. I think it's typically innovations are created sort of at the intersection of two things that we know already. Again, within my field, the latest kind of convergence is sometimes called neuro-AI. And here, this was sparked by developments in artificial intelligence that were actually just geared towards application. So there were people that were trying to build models that could do computer vision well. But now we see that neuroscientists are really profiting from those models and using them as a model of biological vision as well. And there's all kinds of interesting questions that happen sort of at that intersection. So I think that it's always challenging to kind of go outside your comfort zone and to try to connect what you know with another field that you don't know so much about yet. But that's, I think, almost always where the new knowledge lies. So I think it's essential.
Because, of course, things fuse nowadays. Science, different domain, different field, different disciplines are fusing. When we are talking about biology, we're also talking about engineering, because we know that we are able to build a hand that is engineeringly made, and we can plug it to our body, which is biological, which is really flesh. And so we are now a little bit confused about, is it flesh? Is it an apparatus? Is it artificial? Is it not artificial? Is it natural? Even when we are talking about artificial intelligence, it's an analogy with something that is specifically human or specifically for living being. But now we are talking about artificial intelligence. So what does it mean? People don't talk about that much, but I think what does it mean natural intelligence. Is there such a thing as natural intelligence? So, you know, we have to pay attention that this convergence will not convert into confusion.
Et ce que nous avons oublié aussi, beaucoup plus important, c'est les conséquences à court et à moyen long terme. C'est-à-dire, ce n'est pas aujourd'hui, les problèmes environnementaux que nous avons commencé aujourd'hui, les grands changements, les grandes perturbations, les grands événements catastrophiques que nous avons vus, ils n'ont pas commencé aujourd'hui, mais ils ont débuté il y a 30, 40 ans. C'est-à-dire, le système lui-même, il est caractérisé par ce qu'on appelle un concept, l'inertie. C'est-à-dire, c'est pas quand on perturbe, ça ne répond pas tout de suite. Ça répond 30 ans plus tard, parce que c'est la complexité qui fait que la résilience de celle-même. Mais une fois on se rend compte de cette réponse 30 ans plus tard, elle est toujours trop tard. On est immergé et on travaille dans la précipité à trouver des solutions.
Les problèmes viennent du manque de compréhension, parce que quand on vient de différentes expertises, nous ne parlons pas forcément le même langage et nous pouvons avoir des difficultés à dialoguer. Donc il est très important d'avoir la possibilité d'avoir une communication qui soit pertinente, simple, sur des choses qui peuvent être extrêmement compliquées, mais qui doivent être exprimées de façon compréhensible de tous.
We have to remember history. People don't really understand what history is really about. People don't spend time. Growing up, we read about so many things. It helps you learn about yourself, learn about those who were there before, grow into that, and hopefully not start making the same mistakes that were made in the past. And that's how I see convergence. But if you work in one area, stay in silo, you think that is the only truth, and yet it's not. So bringing different disciplines together to tackle one issue gives different perspectives.
Picking from more disciplines, it's mostly beneficial, so it's mostly kind of helping you to find synergy, to kind of really create new knowledge. A side effect of this approach is that you almost always feel like you don't know enough.
What is interesting in this Science Week, it's like we haven't only talked about convergences in an abstract way, but we have talked about it theoretically on one side, like theory means vision, so we had a vision of this convergence of sciences, disciplines and all that, but very concretely for the UM6P, inside the UM6P, how the different departments could collaborate, could converge with the same aim. And one of the most interesting examples that we've seen is this One Health initiative. So that means that health is not only individual health, it's not even only collective health, it's not even only human health. It is the earth health. And maybe it's not only the earth health, it's the cosmic, the universe health.
We have a program called One Health. The idea being that you cannot consider human health as separated from the air we breathe. So you see the air quality, which is a completely different discipline in a sense. Soil health, because that's where we grow plants that we eat. You have to consider this as one health.
Et donc j'étais dans ce panel-là et c'était pluridisciplinaire. Il y avait les gens qui travaillaient sur la pollution de l'air, des gens qui travaillent sur le cycle biogeochimique comme moi, des gens qui travaillent sur les microbes, des gens qui travaillent sur les ressources en eau, des gens qui travaillent sur l'agriculture. Et il y avait cette tendance que vous venez de décrire. Normalement, on voyait que, mais moi parfois ça m'arrive, donc tout le monde veut valoriser sa discipline.
The genus loci means to arrive to a place, to understand the place, and to adapt what you do to that place, to that culture, to that climate, to that costumes, to that people, to that needs. And this is part of the magic of Benguerir, no? Whenever we arrive here, we arrive to a really empty space with a builder that it was not developed yet, but there were a lot of ideas, a lot of really nice and interesting ideas. At some point, before starting designing, we started analyzing. What is engendered? What is the builder? Is the builder as planned working? So at some point, we realized that the UMCSP of engendered, the campus itself, it was going to be the embryon of the builder.
Celui, l'architecture, il va penser autrement, comment pouvoir mettre l'espace vert au sein de ce qu'on appelle les villes de futur. Donc il y a toute une conception. Et après, il y a celui qui travaille sur la santé humaine, va dire exactement, une fois on a fait ça, qu'est-ce que ça peut apporter en termes de santé humaine et qu'est-ce que ça peut avoir comme effet si on ne le fait pas. Et donc, c'est un dialogue qui s'installe, un dialogue qui pose les uns les autres, mais aussi avec des questions de fond. Comment travailler ensemble pour pouvoir. Et je pense que cette conférence Science Week, comme vous l'appelez, de convergence, elle est extrêmement importante. Il faut la maintenir.